Today, the United States Senate heeded the call of the lobbyists from Newtown, Connecticut.
The answer can't be, as it has for 20 years, that we're going to do nothing.
Developing news out of Capitol Hill. The first vote on gun safety comes next hour.
Today, let us decide. There will be no more Newtown.
The debate begins.
The Senate just voted 68 to 31.
The procedural vote in the Senate
To begin debating Senator Harry Reid's gun safety reform bill.
The hard work starts now.
We've got to reach 60 votes.
The bill has gotten past that 60-vote hurdle.
60 votes, not bad.
There is still work to be done.
We've got to reach 60 votes, actually several times.
We don't know what the end result will be.
In order for this to go all the way.
Enough is enough.
White House is pulling out all the stuff.
The public is so far ahead.
Here's the thing. A wide divide remains between the two parties.
The new NBC Wall Street Journal poll.
I've got it right here, Chuck. You know I love this thing.
82% of Democrats favor stricter gun laws.
Only 27% of Republicans want.
Just 27% of Republicans.
All right, so what happens next?
What is the goal?
It needs to be bipartisan.
Republicans and Democrats are working together.
Congressman Mike Thompson and Peter King.
I don't know what they're afraid of. Let it come to a debate.
Pat Toomey and Joe Manchin.
This does nothing to infringe the rights of law-abiding citizens.
All right, so what happens next?
What's next?
The answer can't be, as it has for 20 years, that we're going to do nothing.
The debate begins.
With the families of the victims of the Sandy Hook massacre watching from the Senate gallery today, the Senate voted to move forward on massacre control legislation. The measure passed with 68 votes. 16 Republicans joined 52 Democrats to overwhelm the Republican filibuster threat led by Rand Paul and Ted Cruz. Jillian Soto, who lost her sister in the Newtown massacre, said this.
We had a good start. This is one thing we needed done, and we're not going anywhere. At least I'm not.
President Obama called the Sandy Hook family members who have been lobbying Congress all week. White House Press Secretary Jay Carney described the call this way.
The president congratulated the families on this important step forward, noting that the bipartisan progress would not have been possible without their efforts. He reiterated that much work remains and pledged to continue fighting for the votes they deserve.
Every word of every Republican argument against gun safety legislation pretends that the United States Supreme Court has not already defined the limits of the Second Amendment. Republicans pretend that their favorite Supreme Court Justice, Antonin Scalia, has not already said publicly that, of course, the Second Amendment allows restrictions to be placed on certain weapons. They pretend that the court did not make that clear in the Heller case. They pretend that the only words ever written about the Second Amendment are in the Second Amendment.
The government should not punish or harass law-abiding citizens in the exercise of their Second Amendment rights.
Anyone who's true conservative, whether you're the Senate, House, wherever, watching the show, stand by the Second Amendment.
The Supreme Court has spoken, but in Washington, it seems only the Democrats know that.
You're allowed to deny certain people under the Constitution access. You're allowed to deny certain weapons. You're allowed to deny certain bullets.
Right.
You're allowed to do that. That's constitutional. We can argue whether we should, but this argument there's any constitutional violation is absolutely not there.
Not everyone on Fox News is falling for the Republican constitutional lie.
Doesn't it make sense to have firearm registration just like you register your car? Doesn't that make sense? So then if somebody doesn't register, all right, you can slap them with a 10-year mandatory.
The worst, most vicious lie being told by Republicans is this one.
None of what's been proposed would have stopped it, by the way.
Nothing that's proposed would prevent another Newtown, another Aurora, Colorado.
If you look at Aurora and you look at Newtown, there's nothing that's been proposed here, not a single thing that would have prevented the tragedy.
If the shooter in Tucson, Arizona had been limited to a magazine with 10 bullets, Christina Taylor Greene would be alive today. Christina Taylor Greene's life ended that day at age 9 when she was shot after the 12th bullet had been fired from a magazine holding 33 bullets. That shooter was stopped only when he had to change magazines. You can blame the shooter for the first 10 bullets. you have the law and lawmakers to blame for every bullet fired after that. Magazines larger than 10 rounds used to be illegal in this country. Christina Taylor Greene was safe then. She is dead now because of cowardly lawmakers' indifference to her right to life. The mass murders in Newtown, Connecticut, and Aurora, Colorado, and Tucson, Arizona were all made much more murderous thanks to the members of Congress and lawmakers around the country who have done everything that they can to make sure that when our mass murderers enter a movie theater or a shopping mall or an elementary school, they will be able to go in there with high-capacity magazines. Joining me now, Connecticut Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal and MSNBC's Joy Reid. Senator Blumenthal, you know what happened in Sandy Hook was a result of those high-capacity magazines.
Absolutely right, Lawrence. And by the way, the killer at home had both low-capacity magazines and high-capacity magazines. He took with him the 30-round magazines. Because he wanted to kill more
could you
lethal.
ask for about what high-capacity magazines mean to mass murderers?
There is even more proof, which is that when he had to change magazines, children actually escaped from the classroom. 6 to 11 children really escaped because he had to or chose to change magazines. So there is no question that, as you put it so well, these magazines make these mass killings more murderous. They don't necessarily cause them or compel them. They make them more lethal. And the same is true of assault weapons. He had both shotguns and assault weapons. He chose the assault weapon because he knew he could fire and kill more people more rapidly, more lethally. And that's why we are supporting a bill, and I'm going to be very proud to spearhead the amendment that deals with high-capacity magazines and bans any that have more than 10 rounds, not because they will necessarily end all of the killings in this country. 3,300 people have died since Newtown, but at least they will save some lives. And if we save lives, we've accomplished something.
And Jerry, we all know that we can't end this phenomenon, but there are easy things to do. This limit on magazines, for example, to limit what's going to happen when these kinds of crazy people go on their rampages.
No, absolutely. I mean, we can't obviously stop all car accidents, but that doesn't mean we don't regulate automobiles. It doesn't mean we don't put restrictions on their use. I mean, it is such a shame that in their hour of grief, these Newtown parents have had to trek to Washington with pictures of their children just to get the most basic common sense reforms done that the senator was talking about. It is common sense that the only way to stop a mass murder is to make him pause. If that's all we're asking for, we can save 10 out of 20 kids or 15. Isn't that worth trying? It's unbelievable to me that anyone will be opposed.
Senator, that vote today overwhelmed those opponents who said, we won't even let you debate this. What would that vote have been today if the Newtown families didn't spend the week in Washington?
I don't know exactly what it would have been, but there's no question that they helped to turn the tide. You know, remember back 4 months ago, gun violence control was deemed to be untouchable politically. 4 days ago, we didn't know whether we could reach this 60-vote threshold. Many regarded it as unwinnable and unreachable. And they came to Washington, and they met face to face. Their voices and their faces were really so powerful and so eloquent. Colleagues of mine came to me on the floor of the Senate today, and they said, you know, I met with your constituents, those families. Wow, they are unbelievable. Their strength and courage, I think, was the decisive factor. And, you know, they, as I said on the floor of the Senate, they spoke truth to power. And I think they really did a remarkable job.
Joy, I really don't think we've seen anything like it. There was that thing that was going around in the pundit class the week after this shooting in Connecticut saying, well, how long will the effect last? How long will the effect last? And if we were to calculate is How long can Dick Blumenthal keep this in the air? How long can the congressional delegation from Connecticut keep this alive? It would have been not as strong a calculation, but seeing what those families can do is something we haven't seen in our politics before.
No, absolutely. Some of the most remarkable video I've seen is the family sitting with Joe Manchin, the A-rated, NRA A-rated senator from West Virginia, and he was brought almost to tears just sitting in a room with them and talking with them. And you know what? We don't do it very often, but you do have to kind of give some nods for political courage to people who face tough re-elections like Mary Landrieu, people like Pat Toomey, who were very ensconced with the NRA, who took a tough vote. The NRA is scoring just allowing this bill to proceed. This wasn't the vote on the bill. This was just to allow us to allow the senator and others to debate the bill. So those senators who took that courageous step actually should be commended for listening to those families.
Joy Reid and Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut, thank you both for joining me tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.